sobre los territorios palestinos.
Buenas tardes a todos y todas y muchas gracias por venir hoy. Me alegra ver a tantos periodistas asistiendo a esta rueda de prensa. Y voy a hablar en inglés. As you know, I'm here in Bogotá to attend the Hague Group Emergency Ministerial Conference, where practical measures to end the genocide in Gaza are to be discussed and hopefully taken. This gathering holds the potential to be the beginning of a transformative political process. For too long, international law has been treated as optional, applied selectively on those perceived as weak and ignored by those acting as the powerful. This double standard has eroded the very foundation of the legal order. That era must end. The law must either be universal or it will cease to mean anything at all. No one can afford this selective approach. The conference this week can be a watershed moment. States have the opportunity to break the silence and revert to a path of legality by finally saying, enough. Enough impunity, enough empty rhetoric, enough exceptionalism, and enough complicity. The international legal order is at risk of unraveling under the weight of the atrocities witnessed over the past 21 months. The International Criminal Court prosecutor's application for arrest warrants remains outstanding while the genocidal campaign in Gaza and ethnic cleansing in the rest of the occupied Palestinian territory continues. The provisional measure ordered by the International Court of Justice to prevent genocidal acts and preserve evidence of crimes committed in Gaza remain unfulfilled. The groundbreaking ICJ advisory opinion declaring Israel's occupation unlawful and amounting to racial segregation and apartheid, followed by a widely supported General Assembly resolution giving a deadline for Israel to withdraw and dismantle the occupation, the settlements, and the exploitation of Palestinian natural resources, 17 September 2025, remains to be enforced. The UN Charter and universal human rights instruments must remain everyone's compass. I trust that more states will align their policy with these fundamental principles so that we can move forward at this existential moment for both the Palestinians and the Israeli people and the integrity of the international legal order itself. By the end of the conference, I truly hope that states will agree to some actions. Few actions is okay. It can be 1-2 concrete actions to lead to a meaningful change for the Palestinian people. The international community owes that to them. Lastly, I would like to address, and I'm available to take questions concerning the findings brought forward in my last report, which has exposed the economy of the occupation that Israel has set up and maintained over 57 years over what remains of historical Palestine, the West Bank, the Gaza Strip, and East Jerusalem, and which has turned into an economy of genocide. And thank you.
Tiene la palabra ahora el periodista Diego Stacy del País de España.
Good evening, Mrs. Albanese. I wanted to ask you, how did you receive the news on the U.S. government sanctioning you for a job as a special rapporteur, and what's your response to that decision?
It's a very serious measure. It's unprecedented, and I take it very seriously. It's a clear violation of the Convention on the UN Convention on Privileges and Immunities. That protect UN officials, including independent experts, from words and actions taken in the exercise of their functions. This is something that could lead to the United States to face the ICJ if there were one member state bringing the case before the court. But look, I'm not asking for anything like that. I don't want member states to distract their attention from where it should be right now, ending the genocide in Gaza. This is what matters. And then ending the ethnic cleansing of Palestine, which is advancing at incredible speed. Look, the attacks these attacks, these sanctions, and what has preceded shall not be seen necessarily as an attack directed against me personally. This is rather a warning to anyone who dares to defend international law and human rights, justice and freedom. And I think that in the face of this, we cannot afford to be silenced. And I know that I'm not alone. At the same time, let me say, I really feel, and I'm very touched by the solidarity of the people who, from all corners of the world, tell me, we have behind you. What does it mean? Are you are you walking as an army of moral warriors behind me, or are you just hiding? Is expressing support toward me the best you can do to contribute to end this genocide, which has our fingerprints? So this is why I'm thanking everyone who's expressing solidarity and support. It's not about me, it's about the Palestinian people who are being genocided and erased from their land.
Thank you.
Santiago Caro, del Espectador, pregunta.
Dr. Albanese, after all the denouncing we saw this morning, what could be the next steps in terms of effective actions? That break silence you were talking about.
Yeah, I talk about breaking the silence because we are at this level. The international community has always engaged in rhetoric. There has been condemnation of the settlement expansion, condemnation of the extrajudicial killings, and eminent cases of arrest and detention and torture that over the years, over the decades, the other forms of collective punishment that have affected the Palestinians. Right now, we see that the impunity, that the rhetoric that has remained rhetoric without followed by concrete action, we see that impunity now leading to the current reality, which is apocalyptic for the people in Gaza, but also the West Bank. Entire refugee camps have been raided. The entire Jordan Valley has been emptied of Palestinian life. There were thousands of communities living there. And settler violence continues. And silence has fallen on many members of the international community, particularly, but not only, from the part of the world I come from. So, first of all, they need to come back to senses and speak out. This is unacceptable. And this is not just any genocidal assault on the Palestinians that has the fingerprints of all of us. This is something that is really eroding the multilateral system we are part of. Then, of course, actions have to be taken. Sanctions must be imposed on Israel. And it comes as a shock to member states who for many years have entertained this argument that it's about the colonies and it's about boycotting or sanctioning the settlements and settlers' violence. I wish it had been done before. But now we need to understand what's happening. And what I revealed with my last report is that Israel as a state, its policies and its economic interests are completely and totally intertwined with that of the colonies. So this is why sanctions must be imposed on Israel. And of course, there should be also individual measures taken against the most extreme Israeli leaders or others, waiting for accountability. Because Israeli leaders and others who have committed crimes need to face justice. Being at national level, there are many countries with universal jurisdiction, or at the International Criminal Court. So again, there are many things that need to be done. But concretely, I think that it's absolutely compulsory not to delay further an arms embargo. This is an international obligation. It's no charity. Is no act of solidarity, an arms embargo, and stop transferring other sources of energy that are powering Israeli crimes. And this is just to start with. The last concrete measure that I've asked, this concerns primarily those states who have a port in the Mediterranean Sea. you need to send boats, you need to send not flotilla organized by individuals, which are commendable. But this doesn't take off the responsibility from member states. So it's about time that member states, which have a port in the Mediterranean Sea, send boats with doctors, nurses, and other expertise, foods and medicine, including baby formula that is needed for people not to starve. And then, of course, there would be a need to send a protective presence. But again, one at a time.
Thank you.
Rosa Pérez, France 24.
Hello. Regarding the European Union, why do you think there are not more European countries here to take action? And why do you think the European Union didn't break its agreement with Israel, given that it implies the respect for human rights?
I'm not sure I'm the best person to ask. To answer why they didn't do that. The fact that they didn't do that is appalling. And because if that agreement was a disgrace the moment the European Union entered it, because Israel has committed war crimes and crimes against humanity for decades. Since 1967, when the UN Security Council ordered Israel to withdraw the troops, not only the troops were maintained and are still there, but colonies after colonies after colonies have been built. And now there are 400,000 Israelis who are under Israeli law. This is a war crime. And by the way, this war crime has tripled during the negotiation period, because there were about 80, 90 colonies until the 90s, and now there are 300. So while member states were reciting, entertaining themselves with the mantra of the two states, and for the Palestinians, that commitment, that agreement was a huge sacrifice. They have continued to support it. So, and then there have been crimes against humanity like forced displacement and collective punishment against Gaza, multiple wars, and multiple documented violations of international law. So this is why I'm saying that agreement should have never been entered. The fact that it's been renewed in the face of the total destruction of Gaza marks yet another, probably the lowest point of European Union foreign policy right now, the celebration of double standards, and also, frankly, the betrayal, the fatal betrayal of European values. I've said before, and I repeat, I think that the founding fathers and mothers of the European Union are turning themselves in their graves today.
Thank you.
Convocamos a María Fitzgerald.
Thank you. Dr. Albanese, how can we, as part of the Global South, generate meaningful pressure in a world that has long overlooked us?
I think that the Global South, or global majority, as I prefer calling it, because the concept of the Global North really defies geography. I think the global majority has already taken steps, unprecedented steps, that the global minority has never considered. I hope they will own it. They have having South Africa initiating proceedings against Israel has done something historical, memorable, and has brought Israel before an international court for the first time in its own history. And this is a case that really deserves to receive further support and further participation by other member states, including from the global majority, because this is the first settler colonial genocide to ever be litigated before an international court, and the cry for justice is even louder. I hope they see that the leaders of the global majority, I hope they see that they are inspiring so many, including in the global minority, in the part of the world I come from. And there is a need for principled leadership. It's fantastic that it comes from here, from the place that has already once, through the decolonization era and through making the international law system more democratic, and more reflective of a variety of human rights and needs. It's very powerful to see that they are engaging today as well to take concrete measure, concrete steps against an alliance, which is, because of course there is Israel, but there is the US behind Israel, so there is a lot that they are putting, they're taking risk, but I think this is just one step in the right direction, the first step in the right direction, because the system is breaking apart. We will never be able to get out of this genocide the same way we entered it. And if we don't give birth to something better than this, the future will be much, much grimmer and darker for all of us.
Thank you.
Pregunta Juan Pablo Penagos, del Tiempo.
Ms. Albanese, how can this conference in Bogotá work in order to really stop the genocide in Gaza? And are you expecting to meet personally with President Gustavo Petro?
Actually, I did meet with the president, so it's done. Look, one of the things that my last report revealed is that there is no one who has clean hands when it comes to Palestine. And this is not because of bad intentions of states, it's because of the interconnectedness of the global world we are part of. And therefore, there are economic and financial ties that bring also the global majority, countries in the global majority, including South Africa and Colombia, Malaysia, into this. Now, if these member states decided to stop the provision of coal to Israel and other raw materials and resources, because this is something that comes primarily from the global majority, it would have such an impact. It doesn't take 30 member states. I mean, it can start with a small number of states doing the right thing. 1, 2 actions. Declare an arms embargo. Don't provide further resources. Commit to support accountability, investigations. These are measures that can be taken. Look, truth doesn't require particular intelligence. Truth requires courage. And I truly hope that the member states who have joined the Hague Group will uphold the mission that they have already showed to us.
Thank you.
Mariana Guerrero.
Hi, I want to ask you what measures are states being used to implement in terms of trade restrictions, and how viable are these given their existing commercial agreement with Israel?
I'm not able to answer this question yet, because this is going to be the subject of my next report. In my next report, due to the General Assembly in November this year, I want to examine what member states have done to comply with the ICJ advisory opinion of 2024, especially in light of the proceedings for war crimes, crimes against humanity, and the genocide proceedings. So I know that so far measures have been important, but not such to produce the effect that is needed. So countries like Colombia, who have, or Canada, many other countries, there are so many countries that have free trade agreements with Israel, they must cut them, they must curtail them, they must seize them. There is no yes or no or adjustment to it. These are the measures that have to be imposed given the seriousness of the situation, and hopefully to be removed once the forever occupation will be dismantled together with the apartheid, and this will also be the era where genocides will be accounted for.
Thank you.
Stefano Posebon.
Ciao Francesca, benvenuta in Colombia, tra l'altro. Switching to English, I'm sorry to ask you again about the personal sanctions, but you opened up the possibility of a discussion at the ICJ on these sanctions. I wondered if you could expand a little bit of what you just said? And more in general, if you are worried that this type of retaliation on you personally could scare other multilateral institutions into moderating their criticism of Israel or even open the door to self-censorship. Thank you.
Yeah, I will answer the second part of your question first. Look, the attacks against my mandate, although as I said, I don't think it has anything to do with me as a person, have been intense and very, very fierce for many months right now. It's not something that started now. So these sanctions are the culmination of an harassment that is really unnecessary. But I would like to say that what happens to me is what happens to so many who stand for justice and accountability for human rights of all Israelis and Palestinians who live and call home the place comprised between the river and the sea. I don't know, surely it will have a chilling effect. But what I see now is that this is not what's happening. In fact, the response has been global. There are so many member states who have spoken out, United Nations agency, and I've seen the response being as immediate as I would have never expected. So probably it's also, I also think that these measures, these sanctions have somewhat crossed the line. And yeah, I hope that member states will find a way to keep on protecting me, because frankly, it's not easy to continue doing what I'm doing. But I do because I also, both because this is a mandate I deeply honor. I think it's necessary these days, given what the huge suffering and sacrifice that the Palestinians are taking upon themselves. But also because I think it's important to be an example that we cannot be silenced all. It doesn't matter. We will keep going. It won't be me, it will be someone else. And this is I think this is how we remain human. Concerning what I can say more, again, there is a provision in the 1946 Convention on Privileges and Immunities that makes its violations a sort of self-executing. There could be action taken domestically or before the International Court of Justice. So, for example, the General Assembly, it could be either a state or the General Assembly referring the case to the International Court of Justice for an assessment of whether the United States have violated my privileges and immunities, and which is pretty obvious. But again, I don't think that this is what we need right now.
Are you calling for that assessment?
No, because I'm calling for member states to impose the sanctions, cut ties, economic, diplomatic, financial, military, strategic ties with Israel, and also make sure that any private actor or entity, being them arms manufacturers or companies producing goods and services or parts of the supply chains, banks, pension funds, and even universities and charities, stop being complicit with the crimes that Israel commits, because there are so many entities directly linked, contributing to and even causing human rights violations and even crimes. I mean, the 48 companies, entities I have mentioned in my report, they're just illustrative. They're not even the tip of the iceberg. They are illustrative of a system which must be dismantled. And so there is so much to do on this front that I don't want anyone to waste precious time with other issues. History will prove who's been on the right side over the past over the past months.
Alexandro Rampietti.
Buonasera anche da parte mia, switching to English. Following up on what you just said, do you think that under international law the scale of U.S. support makes Washington a party to the genocide you've outlined? And if you could tell us what concrete action could come out of here that could make a difference. Thank you.
I think I've made a number of recommendations and comments on the concrete actions that must come out of these meetings, which means that the most important thing is that member states need to evaluate, to assess all the ties they have with Israel and cut them. There is nothing neutral. I mean, imagine of being in the 1990s in the face of apartheid South Africa. What would you ask to disengage from the Bantustan, the economy of the Bantustan, to impose sanctions on South Africa just for what it does in the Bantustan, or for what it has done to the non-white South African population? And this is the same thing. Besides the fact that, again, as I said, colonies do not exist on their own. Colonies are connected to Israel. Colonies absorb 10% of the housing needs of Israeli citizens. The water in Palestine, in the West Bank, is being used by Israel. There is one and one only grid, and this is the same water that has been curtailed from the Palestinians in Gaza. And so, the partnership of the universities are not neutral, because even when they engage in the so-called agribusiness, the agribusiness is experimented also with Palestinian resources. So this is what member states need to know and to see. There are certain actions, because the focus of the meeting is the Gaza crisis. There are certain things that are necessary, and an arms embargo, including dual-use items, components, must be imposed. There is no way to slow down and then to stop the killing machine that Israel has put in place other than stop arming it. Or there is no way to address the starvation and the total collapse of the health system without sending vessels with humanitarian aid. Guys, this is what makes us human. I mean, we can keep on talking, but eventually we need to ask ourselves, what would we want if we were there in Gaza or in the West Bank, etc. And again, I truly hope that member states will consider this. Sorry, there was a first part.
The other question was about the U.S. If the U.S.
Yes, I do believe that the U.S. is totally complicit with whatever Israel is doing, but to the point that with the new administration, even the forced displacement of the Palestinians, which has occurred for decades under the watch of everyone, including the United States, has become part of the U.S. foreign policy, while declaring that Gaza is a construction site, is to be turned into the Gaza Riviera, the Riviera of the Mediterranean Sea. And also the U.S. is clear, not only has provided weapons, is the first arms suppliers of Israel, followed by Germany, against which there is a pending case for genocide, by the way, but has also provided political support and is really engaging into mafia-style intimidation of so many who are trying to stop it. And this is why I keep on saying it's about also breaking the silence. Look, something that I've said before, there are 193 members of the international community, of the United Nations. It's about time that the other 191 realize that they have nothing to gain from the criminal endeavor which is committing a genocide which has turned into a genocide in Gaza. And also this must be a wake-up call for all of us, besides member states, as citizens of our own countries and of a global society. Those of us who do not control weapons, algorithms, and large wealth, what do we have to gain from it? Don't we see that this system is also experimenting with weapons and containment techniques over a defenseless population? Do we really believe that this is going to be limited to Palestine and the Middle East? Well, we are very naive in that case. Thanks.
Laura Gamba.
Hello, Ms. Francesca. I wanted to ask you, what does the news that you talked about coming from Brussels today, that the EU did not agree on sanctions against Israel, signal about the current landscape of international accountability? And how does it underscore the urgent need for a coordinated state action being discussed here by the Hague Group?
Yeah. Look, what I said remains valid. It's clear that the European Union, for whatever reasons, because of affinity with Israel and its ideology, because of political convenience, or because of other interests, including that of the companies. I mean, Europe is a huge trade partner of Israel. So, because of all these reasons, the European Union is putting the right to life, really the right to life, the bare life of millions of people to the side. This is regrettable, but it also speaks to other two realities. First, that the European Union is being used as an excuse by member states to evade their international law obligations. Regional law, regional policies and regulation do not overtake international law. International law takes precedence, and so whatever the European Union decides is still an obligation. There is still an obligation upon individual states to prevent genocide and to ensure respect and to respect and ensure respect of international humanitarian law. So they have an obligation to intervene. And a gathering like the Hague Group gives the possibility to act in solidarity, to act together, in order not to have to face, as individual states, let's say the side effects of this stance on principles. The other element is that there are a number of member states who have taken steps toward greater accountability and respect for international law. For example, Spain, Ireland, Norway, to an extent, because I really have an issue with Norway's position on its pension fund, which contributes on its own on 80% on investment of 45 companies that have investigated. But let's say politically, Norway has been on the side of Palestine, and it is to increase these, the coherence of its commitment. And these are the countries that today, Norway is not part of the European Union, but these are the states that need to, despite what the European Union has decided, if they are coherent and with their obligations under international law, they have to act on their own. There is no way around it.
Sorry, can I do a follow-up? Is there a need to recognize the Palestinian state before, is it important, do you think?
Look, I think it should have happened 33 years ago. I mean, I'm right now, for me, this is not the priority. The fact that there is a conference soon to happen in New York, I know that many are working on it, but this is, again, it's another distraction. Because what we need to do, while member states, they don't need to have a conference to recognize the state of Palestine, like Ireland, Spain, and Norway have done. So the point is that member states tend to engage on anything that allows to buy time and not to deal with the real issue. How do we stop the slaughtering of civilians in Gaza? How do we stop the ethnic cleansing of Palestine? And the reality will turn uglier and uglier, and not the contrary.
Mora Hashim, y se prepara José Olivares para cerrar esta ronda de preguntas.
Thank you. My question specifically about the Hague members, the Hague group, the group that established this group. They have very important goals in order to hold Israel accountable for its violations. What do you think they need to focus more as a priority to make achievement?
I think I already answered this question, which is international law. The ICJ advisory opinion has clearly concluded that member states cannot recognize the as legal the consequences of an unlawful act, cannot engage in anything that results in aiding and assisting the unlawful act. Actually, they need to use their leverage, their influence, to bring to a cessation and even forms of reparation. This is a general obligation that member states have, and they should have complied with it decades ago. Now, in the face of the State of Israel accused of war crimes, crimes against humanity and genocide, it's all the more necessary to take measures. And the first measure is cutting ties with Israel, military and strategic first and foremost. And this is not just what member states provide and sell to Israel. It's also what they buy, because so many member states, including in the global majority, buy, even indirectly, security surveillance services and techniques from Israel. And let me be very honest, all these weapons, technologies, from radars, drones, customized weapons, airplanes that have been used for the first time in in beast mode in Gaza to cause the destruction that have caused, or even surveillance system like to spy biometric data that has been part of the biometric apartheid, as Amnesty International has called it, the spying tools, a technique that Israel sells handsomely. These have to stop. So civil society has an obligation to make sure that their respective states, cut these ties first and foremost against arms and surveillance technology. And then, of course, second is the provision of resources like coal. Coal is a significant tool to power the genocidal machine. It has already proven so it is to be cut. Sorry, how many?
José Olivares.
Yeah.
Hi, José Olivares, Dropside News. I have a two-part question for you. The first part is if you can comment on the ongoing negotiations right now between Hamas and the Israeli government, and what seem to be clear attempts by the Israeli government to sabotage those attacks, those negotiations. And my second part of the question is related. Qatar and Egypt are present this week here at the Hague Group. I'm wondering if you have heard anything from those two states, maybe any hesitation or any concerns, anything regarding your calls for the severing of diplomatic ties with Israel.
On the first question of the negotiations, no, frankly, I'm not following because I've been traveling non-stop these past weeks. But there is nothing to negotiate about. Israel needs to withdraw from Gaza totally and unconditionally, and all hostages have to be allowed to return home, both Palestinians and Israelis. This is the first thing. And then Israel owes huge reparations to the Palestinians for what it has done and accountability. No, I've not engaged yet with the states of Qatar and Egypt, but look forward to it. Sorry.
De esta manera concluye la presente rueda de prensa. Agradecemos a la señora Francesca Albanese, relatora especial de las Naciones Unidas sobre los territorios palestinos. Muy buena tarde a todos.
Muchas gracias.